They're the worst floods to hit South Asia in years. Hundreds have died, millions are homeless. Why do governments and militaries across the region appear to be powerless to reach those in danger? This is Inside Story. Hello, I'm Sami Zaidan. Welcome to Inside Story. For more than 2 weeks now, South Asians have been struggling to deal with floods caused by the heaviest rainfall in over 30 years. Well, almost 30 million people in India, Bangladesh and Nepal are affected. More than 400 people have died so far. But help is slow to come. More than 10 million people in the Indian state of Bihar are homeless or stranded and are in need of assistance. Yet only 4 Indian Air Force helicopters are dropping off food packages. Well, the monsoon season hits South Asia every year. Pakistan, India, Sri Lanka and Bangladesh experience the heaviest rainfall. The worst affected areas of the last 2 weeks include the Indian Bihar and Assam provinces, and low-lying Bangladesh was very badly hit too. Well, the monsoon rains are very important to South Asia as economies there are based on agriculture. But flooding on this scale has already devastated the land and washed away some farmers' livelihoods. Well, the worst may be yet to come. The wet season usually lasts well into September. Well, the catastrophe has seen local authorities, aid agencies and the international community mobilize. Yet getting the aid to those affected most is no easy task. Aid agencies have appealed for international help. Apart from the immediate crisis, millions of dollars worth of crops have been destroyed. International agencies are expected to assist for a long time after waters have receded. Getting aid to those affected is hampered by the remoteness of some of the places hit. With bridges and roads washed away, there is no land access. Helicopters are having to ferry food and fresh water, but these aircraft are in short supply. Equally, the race to deliver vital medical supplies is in full swing. Experts fear that water-based diseases such as dysentery and cholera may reach epidemic proportions. Yet the demand for simple medical supplies is already overwhelming. Well, joining our discussion today are our guests in New Delhi, Alice Wilson, Head of Communications at ActionAid in India. In London, Hannah Reid, a researcher in the Climate Change Programme at the International Institute for Environment and Development. In Geneva, Reid Basher from the UN Secretariat of the International Strategy for Disaster Reduction. And on the line from Assam, one of course, the worst affected areas in India, Ziaul Islam, a retired chief engineer from the Department of Flood Control at the government of Assam. Well, thank you all for being with us. If I could start with Alice. In Bihar state, in India alone, for example, thousands of hungry people are waiting in makeshift shelters, awaiting aid. Why is very little help reaching them?
There are some major problems in Bihar. As you've shown in your footage, I'm sure, that the major roads are cut off and the village roads, in many cases, are completely destroyed or completely inundated. What we're seeing is that the bulk of the aid is coming through only on the main state highways. Hence, you have people camping out along the roads all that way without proper shelter or medical care. In Uttar Pradesh alone, there are 850 villages to whom roads have been damaged. 300 are entirely cut off. So people are waiting. In some cases, helicopters are reaching. What we heard alarmingly from Bihar today was that some of the food packets being dropped from the helicopters are bursting on impact. The packaging just isn't quite strong enough, and the food is going to waste or water is seeping in.
So it doesn't
those
sound
are some
like...
of the reasons.
Right, well, let's go over to Hannah Reid in London. The monsoon isn't a surprise, is it? I mean, we know it's coming every year. Can't we predict the intensity and severity of the monsoon season these days?
The monsoon does indeed happen every year, and millions of people in Bangladesh and India rely on it for their livelihoods. 60% of Indians rely on agriculture for their livelihoods. But the trouble is, it's changing. Monsoon season is bringing larger periods of rainfall, which is coming in very heavy bursts. And this could be attributed to climate change. Climate change with climate change, we can expect to see rainfall coming in big, strong bursts, and countries just aren't set up to cope with this. And it's very difficult to predict when this is going to happen and who will be affected and which areas will be affected. But we do know that particularly in the South Asian region, the monsoon season is likely to become more varied, less predictable, and with greater frequency and intensity of these kinds of downpours. So I'm afraid this is going to be a problem that will be continuing in years ahead because of global warming.
All right, let's bring in Zaul Islam, who joins us on the line from one of the hardest hit states. He was formerly with the Assam state government. From your understanding, why are governments so ill prepared for this sort of disaster? Yes, the monsoon season hits in different places and different times, but we know it's coming. And as we're listening to some of those involved in aid work, the government response hasn't been that great. Aid packages are not even being distributed properly.
Yes, the flood problem in Assam is really unique, and so I can say in India, because the mighty Brahmaputra traverses through Assam from east to west. About 650 kilometers in Assam it traverses, and it carries a discharge of around 40 to 45 million cubic, million cubic meter per second. So you can imagine what a volume of water it carries, River Brahmaputra. Last 2 years, 2005, 2006, we did not have much of a flood, but this year, by say up to first week of August, we had a very major flood. Brahmaputra has got an embankment system of about 4,400 kilometers, including its tributaries also. And this flood has caused about 54 number of breaches in the embankment system. So you can feel the damage it has caused, this 54 number of breaches. And then the other major problem is erosion. Brahmaputra causes large-scale erosion in Assam. So.
Right. Sorry to interrupt, but couldn't, for example, in India, the reports speak of only 4 helicopters helping out with the relief effort. Surely a country which has quite a large military could do better than that.
Yes, Army is on the job. Army helicopters, military helicopters is on the job. But I don't feel that is insufficient. I mean, as per necessity, government asks for help from Army authorities, and they come accordingly. There's no question of being insufficient.
All right, let's go over to Reid Basho, who joins us from Geneva. In your experience, of course, you don't represent any governments, but you are a UN agency that works with governments in times of crisis. From a coordination point of view, what sort of process is there for aid to go from donor to recipient?
Well, this is, of course, not a new problem in that floods have occurred, especially in the monsoon areas, every few years. The international community is quite well organised, actually. There's a special UN office for the coordination of humanitarian affairs, and they work very closely with all of the agencies involved, making sure that things are prepared beforehand, and then making sure that the country gets what it asks for. And not all countries need help from outside. India, for example, is a very well-organised country, or shall I say, a well-experienced country with floods and other disasters, and usually has the capacities to handle these by itself.
But what do you make of suggestions that sometimes coordination, whether it's between government and non-governmental organisations, or between perhaps central government and local government, becomes an issue, as demonstrated, some would argue, by what happened with Katrina in the United States?
Yeah, sure. Well, you know, coordination's one of those things that everybody notices when it's not there, but they don't want to pay for it in advance. However, also coordination is tough. You know, you have a new situation every time some event occurs, and the only way to cope with this is to think about it in advance, to have scenarios of what could go wrong, to practice all the communication processes.
Are governments doing that? Sorry to interrupt you, but are governments doing that? Are they practicing? Are they looking in advance? Are they looking at different scenarios in your experience?
I mean, different countries obviously do it differently, but there are many countries, leading countries, that really show fantastic capabilities in this. And the one that we think of often is Cuba, where they practice every year. They have a practice for the hurricane season. Now in India, for example, I know there's also close coordination at the district level and at the community level. And these are, this is where the pain really comes in. And if you are well organised at that sort of level, then you're more likely to be able to cope with the influx of international aid as well.
All right, let's go over to Alice and talk a little bit about the particularities of flooding as opposed to other natural disasters. What sort of aid work can be done during the problem of flooding? What can be done after the water recedes?
Well, crucial during the flooding is reaching the unreached. And so there are many people cut off, marooned, stranded. And one of the ways we're finding is deploying boats, but not doing that without the help of local communities who know exactly where the people are who are missing out. So we're finding villages, families, individual homesteads completely cut off that we're able to reach with basic boats, and more boats would be very useful at this time in certain places. We've also got disease at the doorstep, and World Health Organization predictions are very alarming. And what we are seeing is that where medical camps are set up, we need more of them. We're often needing to get doctors transported more quickly to those camps. And we need to be thinking about, for example, people with disabilities. They're telling me from Orissa that they're not able to get to the camps that have been set up by government. And even if they're able to get there, they're often at the end of the queue because they can't see properly and there isn't assistance for them to reach the front. So those are some of the challenges of particular groups. But we must remember that agricultural damage, the loss of crops in India this year has been phenomenal.
All right, before we go to break, I want to pose, sorry, if I could pose a quick question to Hannah. UN agencies are talking about record-breaking weather this year, whether it's to do with flooding, heat waves or snowfall. Why?
I'm sure this is linked to climate change. No single event can be actually attributed to climate change, but the general trends that we're seeing and that we would expect under climate change is an increasing number of floods and natural disasters such as this. So I would be entirely surprised if there was no climate change link in this. I'm sure there is. All
right, we're going to talk more. Now it's time for a short break. When we come back, we'll talk about the climate changes the planet is witnessing and ask what are the causes, what are the solutions, if any, to this deteriorating situation. Stay with us.